Hello, tiny people. Welcome to Stock Market Class. Here we go again with another lesson. This one's about stocks being a long term play. I don't know if you're aware of what's going on with the stock market, but over the course of the Trump presidency, it has gone up tremendously. We've seen huge gains. Now, with the coronavirus calamity going on, it dropped precipitously. It is building itself back up. We've had a nice little rally here for a little bit. But it's important to learn the lesson from this, and that is that stock markets are not meant for somebody to invest in the very short term. When somebody buys stocks, you're buying a position in a company, you're buying ownership of that company. And as a result, you have to wait to see how that company is faring in the present economy. Let's take a look at Johnson and Johnson stock. Now, Johnson and Johnson is an enormous company and it's incredibly well respected. As a matter of fact, Johnson and Johnson currently in one of the measuring services has a better rating than the United States government as far as bonds are concerned. That means the rating service figures it's more likely that Johnson and Johnson company can pay you back than it is that the United States government can. So take a look at this big, important company, and you'll see that, well, had you invested over the course of a year now, you'd be up a little tiny bit over the course of a year. That doesn't seem like much motivation to jump in and go on this wild ride. So take a look at that down on the right. See that great big dip? Now let's look at Johnson and Johnson in 10 years. Look all the way over on the right. That's that great big dip put into the perspective of an entire decade. Notice how there's been a slow rise. There's been a lot of dips. There's been a lot of places where the thing has jumped very nicely. Please be aware that stocks don't just hold their value and continue to rise. They do bump around. As a matter of fact, on average, every 4 years, there's a negative return on the stock market. Let's take a look at some of those favorite kitty stocks that you guys like. Wow. If you had invested in a couple of these, that would be magnificent. Netflix was the big winner among the stocks you guys most commonly buy. Matter of fact, it was one of the biggest winners in the stock market. 10 years ago, if you had popped down $1,000, your $1,000 would now have a value of 51,966 bucks. That's incredible. Again, one of those giant corporations, which is no longer anywhere near as giant. Look at the one on the bottom of the right hand column, General Electric. That's down to $490 for the $1,000 you put in. So you can see there's a lot of popular names, but you also have to go deeper and figure not just that I like that, is the company sound? Do they have a plan? Are they moving forward? I have a confession. I am too old to get into a Tough Mudder. If you guys don't know what a Tough Mudder is, it was kind of inspired by the way they trained military people. And others who didn't have any interest in being in the military said, well, I want to prove I'm a tough person too. I want to prove I'm in fantastic shape. I want to prove I'm a Tough Mudder. And so they join these competitions, which are held all over the world. And they have to run through these kinds of obstacles. And I know my youngest son was in one, and it was very, very early spring. And it was about, I want to say, about 40 degrees out. And the very first thing they did was sprint a half a mile and then jump into a huge pool of ice water. And then they had to go out and do the rest of the course. Well, I decided I'm a little too old to do something like that. I like more peaceful entertainment now. Well, that's the reason for things like diversification. Diversification means don't put all your eggs in one basket, because if the basket tips over, you've got problems. Perhaps you've heard of a company called Enron. Enron was a great big powerhouse of a company. It looked like it made nothing but money. Oh my gosh, they had tens of thousands of employees, and they were encouraging their employees to buy Enron stock and nothing but Enron stock. And some of these people invested everything over the course of a 10, 15-year career because the stock was doing so well. It was incredible. And then upon further inspection, the government discovered this company doesn't actually do anything but shift money around and take people's investments, and executives live kind of high off the hog, but they're not really producing anything. This company doesn't actually have a value. And for all those employees who had worked so hard and put all their eggs in one basket, they'd all bought nothing but Enron stock. Suddenly, the Enron stock was worth zero. Their savings, their retirement, it all disappeared. Can you imagine that? Not just it took a hit like some of the stocks have done in the last few months. No, it just folded up and their retirement suddenly wasn't there. Well, people have created things called target dated funds. That means an investor is able to pick a date for some future need for the money. And the program, the target dated fund, will automatically switch over the kinds of investments. So let's suppose that when you start working in the world, you're going to be 21 years old and you're going to save for retirement. Well, you've got 40, 45 years that you're going to be working before you're going to need that money. You need to be heavily into stocks because stocks will give you the best return over the long run. But let's take a look at me. I just turned 63 years old. I'm not exactly sure when I'm going to retire, but let's suppose it's at 70. I'm only 7 years away. Now, if I have 7 year window, I can't take huge hits to all of my money. Now, I have to tell you, I've got a long life hopefully ahead of me after I retire. So I still have a lot of stocks, and I lost a couple of $100,000 over the course of this little turndown. But I'm not worried about it because I don't need the money now. I've got a target date in mind for when I'm going to need that money, and there's plenty of time for an economic recovery. Well, these target dated funds can be used for retirement. They can also be used for saving for college. When you were little tiny people and mom and dad started a fund to save so that they could get you a good education after high school, they said, well, gosh, Junior's only 1 year old, and we want to make sure that she's got enough money to go to college. And so they stuck some money in there, but they needed it to grow because they couldn't afford that much when you were younger and they were younger and they weren't making the income they do today. But as you've grown closer, you guys are now hitting on 13 years old. You're only 5 years away. So some of that has shifted out of stocks and into other, a little bit more safe, a little bit more vanilla kinds of investments. Time is everything. Take a look at the returns over there in the left-hand column. Last year, in the last year, you lost money in the stock market if you were heavily invested. In the last 10 years, you average it out, and a person would have made 10% return on an annual basis. If you look at the last 30 years, it was 11.7%, and almost no investment can touch that. For the common person, that's the number one. Now, to build wealth, a person does need some stocks, even in retirement, because remember, if I do retire at 70 and I hope to live, I don't know, give me 15 years anyway, I'm going to need to continue to have some source of income. So I need my stocks to grow, my base of money to grow. When should somebody start investing? As soon as one can afford to buy stocks. It's really important. So many people will go out and say, well, I can't really afford this now because I need some china. I need some new shoes. I need to have gas in the car or insurance or whatever. Yes, there are needs, but can you cut back some to save a little bit? Remember what I told you at the start of the year. 10% of all you make is yours to keep. Pay yourself first. And you'll probably have a chance in your job to get some kind of a retirement account. And they may even match some of what you put in. Put it into stocks while you're young. Then don't forget to partner it with some other investments, because it's not good to be 100% in stocks. And it's certainly not good, as we learned from Enron, to be in 100% of your company's stock. The only thing I'd say there would be there are people who do start their own businesses. And the fact of the matter is, a stock is ownership in a business. And if you are an entrepreneur and you are willing to risk it all, then I can certainly see where that is your stock investment, whether you call it stocks or not. And you may be 100% in there while you're growing your company. It's a great thing to ask parents about if parents are employed in their own business. Now, here's just a picture of a couple of late John Browns. I don't know what's wrong with these guys because I should have had their picture a little earlier, but I do like the look. And if you look closely, you can see Benny's tonsils. And I think Taylor was hypnotized during this picture. All right, tiny people, have a great day.